Imagine this. You're 28 years old. You work. You get paid every month. You don't earn badly. In fact, you make more money than a lot of your friends. But one day, you look at your bank account and see 1,300 euros. That's it. And then something as small as a car repair, moving apartments, an unexpected fine, or simply getting laid off for 2 months happens, and suddenly you realize you are much closer to financial trouble than you thought. And here's the thing, most people think that as long as they can pay their bills this month, they are financially okay. But it doesn't work like that, because it doesn't matter how much money you make. What matters is how long you could survive if tomorrow you stopped making money. And that is exactly what we are going to talk about today, because there is one very simple rule that can tell you whether you are on the right financial track or whether you are much further behind than you think. I call it the 3-salary rule, and it will probably make you see your money in a completely different way. My name is Matt, and I spend way too much time thinking about how much money people should have saved based on their income and age. If you are someone who works, gets paid every month, feels like they are doing everything right, and still never seems to have enough money saved, make sure to subscribe and like this video if it helps you. Because today we are going to look at how much money you should actually have saved for your age. Not according to Instagram, not according to that friend who shows off crypto, watches, and financed cars, and definitely not according to the fantasy of becoming a millionaire before 30. We are going to talk about real numbers, achievable goals, and why so many people who earn good money are still living on the edge of financial disaster. Look, before we talk about the rule, we need to understand the problem. According to several financial studies across the United States and Europe, between 50% and 60% of people are basically living paycheck to paycheck. That means if they stop getting paid for 1 or 2 months, they start having real problems. And the most surprising part is that this does not only happen to people with low incomes. It also happens to people making 2,500, 3,000, or even 5,000 euros a month. Because making money and keeping money are two completely different skills. This is what most people do not realize. Every time their income goes up, their lifestyle goes up too. They make more money, but they rent a more expensive apartment. They upgrade their car. They go out more. They buy the new phone. They travel more. And by the end of the month, they have exactly the same problem they had before, just with more expensive bills. It is like running on a treadmill. You are moving, you are tired, you are putting in effort, but you are not actually getting ahead. So here is the rule. You should have at minimum, the equivalent of 3 months of net salary saved. Not 3 months of expenses, 3 months of salary. If you make 1,500 euros a month, you should have at least 4,500 euros. If you make 2,000 euros a month, you should have 6,000 euros. If you make 3,000 euros a month, you should have 9,000 euros. Why? Because 3 salaries represent something even more important than money. They represent time. Time to recover if you lose your job, time to make better decisions, time to avoid taking the first terrible job that comes along out of desperation, time to avoid going into debt for every emergency, and time to breathe. Now you might be thinking, Matt, that sounds great, but saving 3 salaries is a lot of money. And yes, it is. But this is where it gets really interesting because the first salary you save is the hardest one. The second comes much faster, and the third completely changes your life. Imagine you make 2,000 euros a month and you save your first 2,000. It does not make you rich. You cannot retire. Objectively, it does not change your life. But psychologically, something huge happens. For the first time, you know that if something goes wrong, you are not completely finished. And that reduces stress massively. In fact, several studies show that one of the biggest causes of anxiety in adults is not low income. It is the feeling of having no margin, the feeling that any small problem could destroy your finances. Because living without savings is like driving a car without emergency brakes. Everything can seem fine for a while, but the moment something goes wrong, you panic. When you save 2 salaries, you start making better decisions. You stop buying impulsively so often. You stop accepting ridiculous financial offers. You stop relying so much on credit cards. And here is why. People who live paycheck to paycheck think short term because they have no other option. When you are worried about making it to the end of the month, you are not thinking about investing, building wealth, or planning retirement. You are thinking about survival. But when you have 2 salaries saved, you start thinking differently. You start thinking like someone who has options, and that completely changes your financial behavior. 3 salaries is the point where you stop being vulnerable because now you have margin, and margin is one of the most valuable things in the world. For example, imagine 2 people. They both make 2,500 euros a month. The first person has 300 euros in their account. The second person has 7,500 euros saved. Objectively, they earn the same amount, but financially, they live in completely different worlds. The first person cannot take risks. They cannot change jobs. They cannot invest. They cannot say no to unfair expenses. They cannot breathe. The second person can. They can negotiate better. They can take time off if they lose their job. They can invest without fear. They can survive a rough period. And that difference changes their entire life. So I want you to do something today. Look at how much money you make every month, multiply it by 3, and compare that number to what you currently have saved, because that gap between those 2 numbers will probably tell you exactly where you are financially. And if you're not there yet, that is okay. Everybody starts somewhere, but the sooner you start, the sooner you will have something that most people never get: financial peace of mind. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe, leave a like, and comment how many salaries you currently have saved. And I will see you in the next video.